front door.
How's everybody doing? Nobody wants to sit up here. Everybody's brave. Well, thank you all for being here. This is an exciting night. I know some of you have seen me do this before. If you're a Roche student and you haven't, it's probably a little weird. Because I feel like to most Roche students, I'm one of three things. I'm either their boss, their coach, or the guy getting them in trouble. Sometimes all three. So I know, but I do think that my reputation as a comedian is becoming more widely known. One thing that I find interesting is that a lot of times when I tell people I'm a comedian, their first reaction is, oh yeah, let's hear a joke. And I feel like that's a weird way to respond to somebody first telling you what they do. Like if I meet somebody and they tell me they're an architect, my first response is, oh yeah, render me a house. Yeah. But I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate you coming out. I know sometimes it can be hard to find motivation to do things. I know for me, if I have the option of doing something or doing nothing, 9 times out of 10, my butt's on the couch. But your butt is not on the couch. Your butt is in a chair here because you wanted to see me. So I appreciate that. And, so, we're gonna have a good time tonight. All right. So, and even sometimes when you might have had this experience, even when you have the motivation to do something, sometimes getting there can be hard. You ever look up directions and your GPS just tells you to proceed to the route? Like, bro, I'm gonna need you to be more specific. You're a GPS. I'm a person with no sense of direction. You give me directions, I drive there. That's how this relationship works. Okay? There was one time I was driving and I drove past a speed limit sign that said end speed limit 35. End speed limit 35. So I still had no idea how fast I was allowed to go, right? I feel like a speed limit of not 35 would be hard for police officers to enforce, right? Like I could see myself getting pulled over. The officer says, do you have any idea how fast you were going? No, sir. You were going 35. That's the only speed you can't be going. All right, speed up. Another time I was driving, and have you ever, you know how sometimes when you drive through a school zone, sometimes it has the flashing lights that tells you you need to slow down. Other times it just says school zone, and then it lists the times where you have to slow down. So this time I was driving through a school zone, and it was a joint elementary and middle school, and it was one of the ones where it listed the times. So it said, school zone, speed limit 15, 7:45 to 8:15 a.m., 8:45 to 9:15 a.m., 3 to 3:30 p.m., 4 to 4:30 p.m. So by the time I read the sign and knew whether or not I needed to be driving 15 miles per hour, I was already out of the school zone. And if it was during one of those times, I'd probably hit a child with my car. There was one time I was driving to a neighborhood, and I passed by a sign that said, "Watch children." And I couldn't help but think that they probably should have put the word "for" in the middle. So I'm driving through this neighborhood, and this creepy pedophile sign is just telling me to watch little kids as I'm driving through the neighborhood. So I'm 32 years old, which I feel like that's a good age. I feel like I'm old enough that I can appreciate classic rock music, but I'm young enough that when I hear people say things like "slay" or "she is mother," I know what they're talking about, right? But I feel like I'm at an age and a physical appearance where whenever I go out and do 21 and older activities, it's hit or miss whether or not I get carded. But there was one time when I actually caused myself to get carded. I was going down to the casino, and when I got there, the guard, instead of asking for my ID, just asked me how old I was. And I couldn't remember. The guard was like, "How old are you?" And in my head I was like, "I got this." But I didn't got this. He was like, how old are you? I was like, I'm 30, 32. And then the guard asked for my ID. He was probably like, this teenager doesn't even remember how old his fake ID says he is. The casino is one place that I don't really understand why I like going to it. Because I feel like every time I go, the casino's like, Scott, do you have money? And I'm like, yes. And the casino's like, do you want to continue having money? And I say yes. And the casino says, are you sure this is the place you want to be if you want to continue having money? Because the last 6 times you came here, you did not continue having money by the time you left. And I say, this time will be different. I have my lucky sneakers on. So then the casino says, those are the same sneakers you wear every single day, including the last 6 times you came here. And I'm telling you right now, before you start gambling, I'm going to take your money again. So then, I lose all my money, and then the next week, when I need money, I have the audacity to blame the casino for why I don't have money. All the casino's fault. Nothing to do with me. I was driving one time, and I passed by a Petco, and I saw that the sign above the Petco says Petco Supplies and Fish. So, sometimes Joe's just right to the So Petco was like, how can we get as many customers as possible into this store? We're going to advertise 2 things that we sell. One very general, the other very specific. And that's what's going to get people to shop here. They want supplies, they want fish. I think somebody should write to Walmart and tell them to change their sign so that the sign above the entrance says Walmart, food and shampoo. You know where to go. You need food and shampoo. So I love grocery shopping. I love going to the grocery store, probably because I love food. This guy was not here 10 years ago, I'll tell you that much. But one thing that I don't like about the grocery store is when I'm in line to check out, and I'm in line at the express self-checkout, and there's somebody checking out who has a full cart of things checking out at the self-checkout. So I just want to be like, can you read the sign? It says 12 items or less. What makes you think that your cart of 17,000 items belongs in this line right now? And I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll say that, let's just say you can't read. Okay? You can't read. So chances are none of the things in your cart are what you actually came here for. First of all. But let's just say you can't read, and you didn't see the sign, you couldn't read the sign. Read the room, right? You're in line at the express self-checkout. One guy over here is checking out with a bottle of Windex and a 4-pack of toilet paper. A lady over here is checking out with a single lime. What makes you look at your overflowing cart so that you think, this is where I belong? This is right. Nothing seems off here. One place that I don't like shopping is the mall. And part of why I don't like shopping at the mall is because I can't say no to the people at those kiosks. And there was one specific time where I was walking through the mall, and there was a guy at a kiosk. He was like, hey man, and that was all it took. I was already engaged in the conversation. And this guy was selling body scrubs made with real salt from the Dead Sea. So I have actually been in the Dead Sea, which is a really interesting fun fact for me to share with you all tonight. But it's probably a detail I should have left out that day, because he probably thought that I was just going to be another guy walking by blowing him off. And instead, within 30 seconds of our conversation, I had shared this intimate detail about a personal connection we didn't know we had. And all of a sudden, as soon as I said that I've been in the Dead Sea, I just saw victory in his eyes. He was like, this guy better call his bank because he needs a credit increase. And that guy was probably right. But for the next few months, my skin was smoother than it's ever been. So, was it worth it? It's for you to decide. Another time I was in the mall, And I walked past two people. One was an older woman, probably, I would guess, in her 70s. There was a younger guy in his 20s-ish. So I'm going to guess that they were maybe a grandmother and a grandson. And her phone started ringing in her purse. And she picked up her phone out of her purse, and while it was still ringing, held it up to her face and was like, hello, hello? And then she realized that she wasn't answering it, and she handed it to her grandson. She was like, Barry, will you help me answer this? And so Barry just swiped the screen, and everything was fine. And that got me thinking, I know that technology is advancing, and I know that it can be challenging for older generations to keep up with new technology, right? Because they're not used to it, they didn't grow up with it. I also know that 40 years from now, I might regret this joke. But I feel like of all the parts of a smartphone that are difficult, that are legitimately confusing, I feel like answering the phone isn't one of those things. Like, even if I was, again, maybe I'll regret this later, but I feel like even if I didn't have any idea how a phone worked, if I heard my phone ringing, I looked at the screen, I saw a slide to answer. Maybe that's a hint. You don't need to panic anymore. It's all gonna be okay. One thing about smartphones that I don't understand though is that I feel like the voicemail gets full really fast. Like, I feel like I can store like 7 million photos and like 6,000 videos on my phone, but as soon as I hit like 12 voicemails, the mailbox is full, I cannot accept any other messages. And it's like, you're a phone. Like, I appreciate that I can take pictures, but I feel like voicemail is like the OG phone feature. And that's the one thing I can't do on this phone. I don't know. I probably feel like, I sound like a dad right now. I feel like these are things a dad would say. It's a good segue into my next segment of the show that I like to call Jokes with Dad. This is my personal favorite because it's basically my everyday life. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to say some dad jokes, and when I get to the punchline, I'm going to do this to make myself look more like a dad.
Wow.
A dad walks into a restaurant that's almost completely empty. As he walks up to the host, he says, "You think you can find a table for us?" A dad is with his kid, and his kid is complaining about having to carry a heavy backpack. As soon as his kid takes the backpack off, Dad says, "I bet that's a weight lifted off your shoulders." A dad is in the kitchen with his kid. His kid says, "Hey Dad, there are a lot of ants crawling around on the floor." Dad says, "Huh, I thought those were uncles." Another thing I didn't say, I probably should have, I usually preface this segment by saying this, I didn't think to do it this time. So these are all real jokes that I've heard dads say. Whether it's my dad, whether it's my wife's dad, whether it's just a random dad I came across at the mall while I was ordering sea salts. At some point, I actually heard a dad say all of these things. A dad and his kid are walking through the grocery store right after the beginning of the pandemic. Kid says, "Hey Dad, the toilet paper's still missing." Dad says, "Well, there are a lot of assholes out there." A dad and his kid are at home. The kid can't find his phone and says, "Hey Dad, can you call my phone?" Dad says, "Your phone." kid works at a bakery. One day, the kid comes home complaining about having to work overtime at the bakery. Dad says, well, you gotta make that dough. A dad gets a haircut. When he comes home, Mom says, you cut your hair. Dad says, no, somebody else did. A dad is checking out at the store. When the cashier is ringing up the items, she says, I don't see a price tag on this item. Dad says, guess it's free. A dad sees someone. A very short while later, he sees the same person again. Dad says, long time no see. A dad is building something with his kid. His kid says, hey Dad, can you give me a hand? Dad says, alright, that's Jokes with Dad. The second part of that, I know I said that they're genuine because I've heard Dad say them. I'm pretty sure I've also said all of them. So I'm ready. Ready for when it happens. So one other thing about me that some of you know, but some of you may not, I'm Jewish. I was born and raised in a Jewish family. I'm a grown Jewish man. And one thing that I appreciate about being Jewish is that I've never heard a negative stereotype about Jewish people. Like, the only stereotype in general I've heard is that Jews are cheap, but I feel like that's not a bad thing. Right? Like, I don't mind if somebody stereotypes me because they think I'm better with money than they are. You're Jewish, so you must be cheap. Thanks for the stereotype. You should open a savings account too. The best time for a Jewish person to get blood work done is on Yom Kippur, because then we can knock out 2 events with one fast. So when I was in college, I took a trip to Israel, which was the dreaded time I went in the Dead Sea and set myself up for failure 10 years later. But I went to Israel, and I remember before I left, I posted on Facebook that I was going to Israel, and there were people that responded to my status in Hebrew. As if, because I was going to Israel, all of a sudden I was fluent in their native language. That would be like if I told people I enjoyed playing the board game Operation, and they started talking to me about medical procedures. I do think it's interesting that Christian is a normal and popular name for a person, but I feel like Christian is the only religious identity that doubles as a person's name. Right? Like, if I went up to you and I was like, I'm Scott, this is my buddy Christian, nobody would think twice about it. But you're never going to hear me walk up to you and be like, I'm Scott, this is my buddy Jewish. Or, Scott, Presbyterian, nice to meet you. I also think that being named Jesus would give you like a really high bar to live up to. Like, who are you named after? The Lord. I am named after our Lord and Savior. Okay, Jesus. I see you got a bottle of water there. Let's see you work some magic. So one kind of weird thing that still happens to me as a Jewish person is that to this day, I still, every once in a while, will get emails from christianmingle.com trying to recruit me to join. And it makes me feel like they have to be desperate to find people to join their site. This is a website for Christian singles. So what makes them see this Jewish married person and be like, that's who we need? Like, how did that conversation go? Like, okay, here's our first candidate. He's not Christian, he's not single, but we need people. Phil, what do you think? Well, people convert, and 50% of marriages end in divorce, and you know what's not that 50%? I say we go for it. So when I was younger, I did actually create an online dating profile, and I was that guy who actually put serious thought and effort into his online dating profile, as if some really hot girl was gonna see it and be like, oh my god, he is sensitive, he is kind, he loves hugs, we're having sex tonight. Didn't work out that way from online dating, but got the girl in the end, you know. So I don't really have a way to like transition to my next joke about drugs. That's where we're gonna go. Have you ever seen a drug sniffing dog and how crazy they are? Like if they smell drugs, they're like scratching things, tearing things apart, barking like crazy. I think it would be more interesting to see a drug-sniffing cat. Like you see a police officer walking into a house with a cat on a leash with its Cat9 vest on, and all of a sudden the cat smells drugs, and it's like, meow. These are the things I think about. So my brother-in-law got a puppy recently, last year. His name is Rocket. And one thing that he did to teach Rocket discipline was that whenever it's time for Rocket to eat, when there's food in his bowl, he's not allowed to touch his food until someone says, okay, Rocket. So he'll have food, he'll be sitting there with his sad puppy eyes, and then someone says, okay, Rocket, and he can eat. So I was out at a restaurant with a group of people, and my food came out before everybody else's. And I was sitting there, so hungry. My food was there, it smelled so good, and I knew it would be rude to eat it. And then I thought to myself, I'm Rocket. This is how he feels. And I'm just sitting there waiting for someone to be like, Scott, don't let it get cold. And that's my equivalent of, okay, Rocket. I find it odd that we use signatures as a way to verify our identity. So I'm going to take a little poll. By a show of hands, how many of you think that if you signed something, another person could read your signature and be able to tell what your name is from your signature? Okay, so like 7 people. And this is what we use to sign on a house. This is what we use, who knows? I can't read my own signature. Who knows whose name is on my wife's wedding certificate? It's me, don't worry. But how did that become a thing that all of a sudden you sign for it, you scribble, and it's yours? There was one time when I was borrowing my wife's card, and I went to check out, and I needed to sign my name, and our names are completely different, and I signed my name, and nobody said anything. I was like, oh yeah, this is Jenna Norway. Looks just like Scott Miller. Speaking of security, you ever have the experience where you are creating a new profile on an online site, and it asks you to create a password, and it pulls up a suggested password, and the suggested password has 25 random letters and numbers? It's 35QT, exclamation point, capital V, ampersand, 24, 15 more letters. Yeah, I'll remember that. I have 2 passwords. And if a website forgets my password and I have to re-enter it, I panic. And you think I'm going to remember your suggested password. I don't even know my own passwords. There was one time when I was talking to somebody, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but he was like, "You done that, right?" And I was like, "I did that." And he was like, "Oh, you're a grammar Nazi now." And like, I get it. That wasn't a very cool thing for me to do, right? But I wanted to be like, do you know what a Nazi is? Do you realize the comparison you're making? Guy who served under Hitler and killed a bunch of people. Guy who corrected my grammar. Tomato. So I don't know a whole lot about like planets or zodiac signs or anything like that. But I heard one time that there were 6 planets in retrograde at the same time. And that's a big deal. I couldn't tell you why it's a big deal, but people told me it was a big deal, so I knew it was a big deal. But I wanted to be informed. So I looked up the Google definition of retrograde. And one of the first definitions that came up said, to show retrogradation. So that's cleared up if anybody was. Alright, so I'm going to move into another segment of the show. This one will be unfamiliar even to those who were here last year. Ooh. And it actually involves audience participation. So this segment is called Said No One Ever. So the way this works is that I'm going to say a bunch of things that nobody in their right mind would ever actually think. And then you all just respond and say, said no one ever. So, for example, I could say something like, I made it through a whole practice without anybody on the softball team saying anything completely ridiculous. Right, because nobody would ever actually have that experience. So that's how it works. That was your joke. All right. I went to get my phone fixed, and there was no wait at the Apple store.
Said no one ever.
You know what really made me enjoy that football game? The refs.
Said no one ever.
I went grocery shopping today, and all 4 wheels on my shopping cart were quiet and properly functioning. I found tickets to the Taylor Swift concert. And I know, and there might be a few of you in the room that are like, I did buy tickets, and you're the people that everybody else hates. Just at the last concert I went to, I didn't see anybody recording on their phones. When I called the store, I was easily able to navigate through their automated phone menu to get to the information I needed.
Said no one ever.
It calms me behind the wheel, seeing how good everybody else is at driving during rush hour.
Whatever.
After watching the news, I feel very encouraged about how things are looking in the world.
Said no one ever.
The one thing I really want to find in my house is a spider.
Said no one ever.
When I pulled up to the ATM, I parked close enough that I didn't have to stick my entire body out.
Said no one ever.
And the last one here, I think the Pirates are going all the way this year.
Said no one ever.
So one thing that I feel very fortunate about, and I'm going to knock on all the wood when I say this, I feel like I've been pretty healthy so far in my life. I've been in good physical health, but sometimes I see these medicine commercials on TV, and I'm like, maybe I'm better off just being sick than taking this medicine. So I could see it, like there's a commercial I'm sure out there for like a medicine for arthritis, right? And it'll say side effects may include nausea, dizziness, vomiting, cancer, death, your soul being sucked out through your mouth by a dementor. Yeah, arthritis is fun. Bring on the arthritis. Another commercial I saw, another medicine commercial, there was a disclaimer that said, tell your doctor, before using this product, tell your doctor if you have diabetes. Shouldn't your doctor know that? It's not like it says, tell your doctor if you had a mild ear infection 5 years ago. Like, this is diabetes, right? Like, if your doctor doesn't know that you have a potentially life-threatening disease, the commercial should probably say, before using this product, find a new doctor if yours doesn't know you have diabetes. Another one of those commercials, it was for Nurtec. I don't know what Nurtec is for, I don't remember, but one of the disclaimers said, don't take if you're allergic to Nurtec. My first thought was, there are people that need to hear this. Somebody's going to take Nurtec knowing they're allergic, they're going to have a reaction, and they're going to sue Nurtec, and that's why they have to put that on there. But then I'm also like, thank you for the notification. Now I know what to do. Does that also mean that if I'm allergic to peanuts, I shouldn't have peanuts? Only Nurtec would say. The worst thing to be allergic to would be allergy medicine. So did you hear about Scott? Yeah, I heard he died from a reaction to a peanut allergy. No, he died from a reaction to saving himself from a reaction to a peanut allergy. So, one thing that we all know, COVID changed a lot of things. One thing that I saw that at first I thought was really sad was that there were people who would say, when COVID first started, that they didn't feel comfortable blowing out birthday candles because they'd be blowing on the cake. And I was like, that's really sad. That's like a tradition of birthdays. But then I started thinking more about it, and I was like, why is this something that we normally are comfortable with? Because literally what happens is, who wants a piece? I'll just have a little piece. It took a pandemic for somebody to be like, maybe we shouldn't eat this cake that Phyllis just spat all over. So one thing about me is that I'm not very good at knowing the right words to say when somebody close to me experiences a personal tragedy. So I had a buddy whose grandmother passed away, and he was telling me all about how great she was, how wonderful of a lady she was. And I made the following comment. Well, it sounds like she had a one-way ticket to heaven. In my defense, what I meant was that because of how wonderful you're saying she is, I'm sure our Lord and Savior had a place for her in his kingdom of heaven. That's what I meant. But how it came across was, first of all, Scott, you're a super insensitive person. Second of all, maybe there's a way that could be a round trip. Like, oh yeah, my other buddy, yeah. She went to heaven for a week, came back, right? Flew Delta, round trip to heaven. Speaking of heaven, and feeling like I was going to find myself in heaven, there was one time I was driving on the turnpike, which in itself could make you feel that way, but it was a beautiful day. I was driving with the windows down, wasp flew in through the window. I know, right? And I was there. So that was horrifying. And I am surprised I'm still alive. I'm not gonna lie. Fortunately, it left after like 2 seconds, so it was only like a momentary panic, because I'm pretty sure that if it hung around there, I would have crashed the car. And thinking of that situation, of all the things going on, it's a pretty windy road, driving 70 miles per hour. It's the turnpike, so I have a concrete barrier on my left, a guardrail on my right. I'm not allergic to wasps. So there are many worse things that could happen than that wasp stinging me. But I'm horrified of bugs. So here we are. Another time in my apartment, I saw a spider, and I had a buddy that was over, and he was like, "You know, that spider is more scared of you than you are of it." And I just wanted to slap him. First of all, that's not a helpful comment for this situation. Second of all, I don't think you understand how scared I am of it. Third of all, okay, if I walk through a spider web, if I invade a spider's home, as soon as I feel myself walk through it, I'm like, oh my god, is there a spider? I'm gonna get it off. This spider's just chilling in my bathtub, looking up at me like, what are you gonna do? Do you think that it's more scared of me? Think again. It's another one where I don't really have a good transition to stranger danger, so that's where we're going. When we're growing up, our parents will tell us not to talk to strangers, right? And a lot of times what they'll say is, if a stranger in a car offers you candy, don't take it. So how is it that they were okay with the ice cream truck? If a stranger in a car offers you candy, don't take it. But if the stranger is in a musical truck and offers you ice cream, pay him for it. We got a maintenance mishap.
Oh my god.
Broken window. Feels better. So one thing that we had when I was younger, it might still be a thing, I'm not sure, but there was a take your child to work day. Is that still a thing? Yeah, so like instead of going to school, you can go to work with your mom or your dad. Which seems like a really good idea in principle, but it could easily backfire if your parents don't like their job or work in like a dangerous job. It's like, hey buddy, you follow in my footsteps, who broke me just as miserable as your old man. Okay, going down to the coal mines today. Hasn't exploded in years. Kid comes to school and I say, I don't want to work. And they just sound like a millennial. So a lot of times when we have elderly family members who need assistance with living, we will say that we're moving them into a home, which I've always found to be an ironic way of saying it, because what we're actually doing is moving them out of their home into a place that they probably don't want to be. But I thought of a good way to spin it, right? You can tell them that they're going to senior citizens college. Because I have observed a lot of similarities between assisted living homes and college dorms and residence halls. For example, residents pay an outrageous amount of money to live in a very small room with few amenities. Second of all, at mealtimes, residents go down to the dining hall and eat the same food every week. Third, oftentimes, residents who live together have trouble communicating effectively with one another. There's one more that I can't remember, and it was a good one, and I'm really mad about it. But just know that it was funny, and you would be laughing if I could. So next time Grandma or Grandpa says, I don't want to go, I'm miserable here, just be like, I got you. I understand. All right. Still doing okay?
Woo!
All right. So, got one last thing on the docket here, one last segment. And I think that this is oftentimes a favorite of people who only know me as Adult Scott and didn't know me when I was younger. This is called What Was Scott Thinking? So if any of you are on Facebook, you may know that it brings up memories of things that you posted on this day, however many years ago. So, these are all things that I said on Facebook at least 10 years ago. And I said some dumb stuff. I was not always the stand-up guy that you see up here today. So, no pun intended. That wasn't even one of the dad jokes. So, the way this segment works is I'm going to read you some things that I actually posted on Facebook 10 plus years ago, and then I'm going to give my present day analysis of what Scott was thinking when he posted it. First one. Scott Miller's chicken lo mein is here. Nom nom nom. So first of all, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you order chicken lo mein. Nobody cares if it's here. It's not going to change anybody's life. Second of all, what were you hoping to accomplish by saying nom nom nom? And mind you, this was before Schitt's Creek. This was before nom nom for us, David, was a thing. I just said this on my own with no prompting. So, if you care, my chicken lo mein arrived years ago. Next one. Scott Miller should be taking a nap, but is too cool for that, so instead I'm on Facebook. Because when I assess whether or not someone's cool, there are two questions I ask. First question is, are they taking a nap? If the answer is no, second question is, are they on Facebook? If the answer is yes, that's a cool person. So I was a cool person that day. All right, next one. Scott Miller is looking for a lunch partner at school on Mondays/Wednesdays around 1 or Tuesdays/Thursdays around 2. Any takers? Just text someone. If you think you're so important that you can create lunch appointments on Facebook, everybody's going to come swarming over.
Christian Mingle comes in.
So this one's pretty similar. Scott Miller wants to go to the Orioles game on Friday, May 8th against the Yankees. People should come with and/or invite me. So maybe it wasn't because I thought I was so popular. Maybe it was because I made that friend. Because not only am I trying to schedule appointments to make plans on Facebook, but now I've extended that to inviting myself to other people's plans that they probably didn't even know they had. Scott Miller is as bored as a Jew on Easter. I don't know. Good job. Scott Miller learned some new things about himself at Taco Bell. Because, most people, when they're trying to do some deep reflection, they'll meditate, they'll exercise, they'll stargaze. Apparently, I'm eating the Crunchwrap Supreme. No. but not least, I feel like this sums up all the rest of them pretty well. Scott Miller feels so popular, I have plans like every minute of every day this weekend. So for you all, I appreciate that you started your weekend plans with me. I'm going to throw out a little plug that I hope you'll end your weekend plans on Sunday by coming up to the athletic complex to see the softball team take on Penn State Barons.